Hey, Butchie. Just curious, now that you've had some, days to sort of sit back and contemplate and sort of break down the series against the Islanders, where were the areas that you felt like weren't good enough, things went wrong, etc.?
Well, I feel we had pockets, Hags, of real good hockey against the Islanders, particularly at home. Games 2 and 5. I thought we played certainly well enough to win. And I guess where it went wrong is what they did better than us is find a way to win games when they maybe didn't have their A game, or stay in games through the tougher stretches. So that takes us to me to game 6, obviously. We weren't able to put out fires in the second period that we created ourselves. So that was another area. Our puck management cost us in some games, plays we made. And you have to credit the Islanders for that. They're good at putting pressure on you, forcing you into mistakes. But at the end of the day, that was an area of our game that we needed to be cleaner. Obviously, our penalty kill didn't get the job done as it typically did during the year and against Washington. Some of that was some tough luck around the net, but the numbers were there. So that's an area that we could have been better in. And then playing from behind in New York, some second period breakdowns. And we saw it yesterday with Tampa. Barzal's goals, typical of what they do, and you got to be ready for it. They can get you in a quick strike. In that second period, they're good at transitioning. And we weren't able to sort of handle that. And that showed up again in game 6. So those are probably the areas at the end of the day that cost us, because I honestly don't think there was a lot to pick from both teams if you look at the whole series. But at the end of the day, at key moments, they came through in game 5 and game 6. And as a result, they get to move on.
And knowing what we know now, that Tuukka's going to need surgery, that at times in the playoffs it did look like the workload was starting to wear on him physically. Just any regrets at all about not going with Swayman in game 6 or towards the latter point of that series?
Well, I'll tell you the process. I'll be quite open with you. Obviously, Tuukka's acknowledged that he was playing hurt. And he met with us every day, medical staff, myself, goalie Bob, to go through his status, particularly in the playoffs. I mean, this was an injury that occurred, he played game 1 with it, against Washington, right through to obviously game 6 in New York. So, it was the same injury, sort of the same player dealing with it. We just got different results in the second round. Obviously, some of that is obviously team oriented in both the first and the second round. You don't put everything on the goalie when you lose, just like you don't when you win. So in that case, Hags, we were never going to run out a goal, a player that wasn't fit to play. So it first passed through him. Then, alluding to your question, and he regularly told us he was ready to go. Incident game 5 after the second period, I thought he didn't look as sharp. Goalie Bob talked to him. He said he was lacking some energy. So we said, well, we'll go with Swayman in the third. And then we'll sort it out in game 6. And again, he came back the next day, said he was feeling better. Go through his routine, his maintenance. He didn't skate a lot between games, get the morning skate in, and felt ready to go. So then it comes on to me. I have to make the final call. Who gives us the best chance to win? And I chose Tuukka. So no regrets on that. We feel he gave us the best chance to win. It didn't work out that way. And then some of those decisions also go through the leadership group. Where are you guys at in terms of your mental psyche with the goaltending? And they were all on board with Tuukka as well. They certainly believe in Swayman, but Tuukka's been there and done it. So that's where that decision came from. And at the end of the day, it didn't work out. So you're always going to sort of analyze some things that happened after the series, but that's when we felt he gave us the best chance to win. That was the decision. He was healthy to play, had played well, and that was that.
Steve Conroy.
Hey, Bruce, how you doing?
Good.
On that decision, I mean, how much more difficult did that become to turn to Swayman the further away you got from him playing?
Well, that becomes the part, as I said, once we get all the information from Tuukka, who was our starter, that he was good to go. Then you say, okay, you start factoring in performance. Does the other guy give you a better chance to win? And as I said, we felt Tuukka's performance, other than game 5, was very good. and perfectly normal for a goalie to have an off night. You're more worried, was it because of, an injury? Is it because you were off? Is it because of the team in front of you, et cetera? So we clarified that the next day he was ready to go and fit. So we stuck with him. And then, so I guess you get that information first, sorry, Steve. And then you go, okay, well, should we put the other guy in? Is it time then to give him a break, or does the other guy give us the best chance to win, the other guy being Swayman as a backup? And we just felt that, no, that wouldn't be the case. And some of it had to do with that. Absolutely. The farther you go, especially for a younger guy that's not really been in that position that much, is that the best spot to put him in? Obviously, if Tuukka couldn't go, that would have been the decision. It was easy for us because he was the next guy up. He'd been preparing to go in if something should happen. But Tuukka was fit to go. So it did factor in a little bit, but at the end of the day, it was more about Tuukka, less about Swayman.
Okay. And Jake obviously didn't have the kind of season that anybody wanted, but obviously a very talented kid. What was the message to him, going into the off season to kind of wipe the slate clean?
Well, I think with Jake, there needs to be a little time personally. So my conversations with Jake, I think would have been too raw the day after. So the players had some times to themselves. So we're going to sit down this week now that we've both digested a little bit of the season and say, okay, let's find some common ground on where you see yourself fitting into this lineup and where I feel you need to be better, and see if we can, sort through some of the stuff now that the season's over. Sometimes in seasons, players are just going to tell you what you want to hear at times. So it'll be up to me, Steve, to get dig a little deeper with them so we can get to the root of, okay, what's going to make you the best player? Now, we've tried that. Don't get me wrong. In season, players have meetings with coaches, the assistant coaches, et cetera, but you're always on to the next game. So you can get through some of it, but maybe this will be a little bit of a longer process with Jake, because we feel he's a good kid. He's been a good player for the Bruins. He's been inconsistent. And so part of that falls on the player. Obviously, it's his job to get himself ready. And part of it falls on the staff to get the best out of him. So I know, you've heard that before, but that is where we're going to try to dig to. And hopefully we can find some common ground on that. And at the end of the day, get him to where he needs to be.
Kevin Dupont.
Two, if I could, Butch, and maybe this is a moot question based on that last answer, but I'm wondering what your message was to the group immediately after that game, and what has been your message since, be it collectively or individually?
Well, there's not much to say after you lose, Kevin. I've learned that over the years. Usually the captain has a few words for the players. And individually, as players sorted through, it is more about their game, where they fit in with this team, what is happening going forward. And some of that changes for every player. So there's a bit of an unknown. For example, the unrestricted guys that just got here, where are you at with the Bruins? There's questions about that. What they saw here, they didn't see other places, so we can continue to get better, get positive feedback, negative feedback, whatever feedback we can get. And then obviously discuss with the player his role going forward, if there is that interest. So those are the things that are generally said with the guys that are some uncertainty. With other guys, you're sitting back reviewing a little bit of their season and where they can grow their game, what they need from us, what do they expect. And then there's meetings. Actually, some more will take place, Kevin, later once some decisions are made. I'll use last year's example. We decided to go with some younger defensemen. That process played out over time. So there is some conversations along the way about, that fit, new partnerships, et cetera. How would they be? So some of those deeper conversations take place down the line a little bit as well, because like I said, everything's very raw right after. And I honestly believe sometimes as a player, it's in one ear out the other. They're kind of focused on what just happened, what's in their, immediate sort of next day, what's going on, because they're out of their routine. So I never try to get too deep right away, simply because of that. There's let the dust settle a little bit, let them digest what just happened, and then let's have honest conversations about, where we can end up. Like I said, 3 or 4 days, 4 or 5 days, whatever the case may be down the road, once they've sort of taken it in.
And lastly, this one is, I guess, more of a summation question, but you've had 5 kicks at the can yourself now here, 2017 being the first one. You come within a win a couple of years ago. What do you think it takes to win this thing?
Well, obviously you gotta, as I said earlier, I think you have to find ways to put out fires and win games in a series when you're not at your best, because you're not going to be at your best every night, simply because you're playing better and better teams as you go along that have also got on a roll. I think you need some puck luck. There's games you look back that, you did something and you were fortunate, not lucky, but created some puck luck for yourself. And I guess when I say not lucky, I mean, you can't play terrible and just expect to go out and get, 3 lucky bounces. But in those sort of even games, or maybe you're not quite as good or a little bit better, the ones that could go either way, you do need some puck luck. And then I think you need health. That goes without saying. Certainly next man up. Guys have to be prepared to go in. But in general, you need to stay relatively healthy. So those are 3 things I think that really matter. Obviously, I'm skipping over the obvious of goaltending. Usually your penalty kill has to be very good, but the Islanders are proving that wrong right now. They're getting by without it. They're certainly getting the goaltending. They've been healthy. And then, there's this saying, the best players need to be your best players. Well, sometimes in the playoffs, they'll get shut down for a series, and your secondary guys will come through for you. So, and to me, that goes back to finding a way to win, through not being at your best, or with some of your best guys, not leading the way in a certain series or stretch of games. So to me, that's what I've seen happen. Again, it's been 5 years, so I've been through it, not as much as the Bergerons of the world, but certainly through it. And hopefully we get another chance. That's obviously what I want, is to get us back to where we were, and hopefully correct some of the things that we could do better as a staff. And hopefully, we stay healthy in the playoffs. It's been a couple of years now that it's bit us where, for whatever reason, we haven't been at full health, and then see if we can generate enough puck luck.
Pluto.
Bruce, 2 questions. Did it ever reach the point with Tuukka during the season, maybe when he hurt his back, where you guys had the conversation, let's just shut him down and get him right?
Shut him down for the season, or shut him down for?
Yes, for the season, and have the surgery.
I don't believe so. He may have had that with the medical team. But no, there was never that discussion. It was more about, let's get him the rest he needs. I think when we've, I forget the timeline exactly, but we looked at it as, hey, Yarrow's been a great backup for us here for years. We can get through some stretches here. We'll get a look at our younger guys, and all of a sudden Yarrow's went to COVID, but we did go with Vladar in Pittsburgh. I think it was a back-to-back, and he played very well for us. So right away, you're like, well, good, we might have some depth back there. And all of a sudden Yarrow goes in COVID, so now it's Swayman as well. And he shows us we've got even more depth back there. So that was the positive of it. But in the meantime, we were not considering shutting down Tuukka. That would have to have been his call. And I think it goes back to the question a little bit earlier. There's guys, Fluto, Marshy Pasta last year, Kucherov for that matter, played through the playoffs and all had to have surgeries. So it happens. And then we have guys in season this year that Johnny Moore and Steve Camphor, who tried to play through, couldn't get where they needed to be and elected to have surgery. So you got guys on both sides of the line there with that. And typically it's the player's decision. He has to be comfortable with his body. And we've said that all along. We're not going to put anybody out there that's not fit to play. Obviously sometimes second opinions come into play with all that. With Tuukka, no, it was a matter of let's get him some rest, get him his point of care treatments, put a schedule together for maintenance for him. And then obviously check with the individual on a daily basis to see how he's progressing. So and you hope that's enough to keep them ready to play. So that was the discussion. That's how it played out.
Okay. And then second, does this give you, and who knows what the playoffs are like going forward, and who knows what the goalies are like going forward, but does this give you some thought about rotating goalies in the playoffs? Maybe other organizations do this too, and say maybe this is to ride one guy for a whole run. Maybe it's just not, it's tough today.
It is. Okay. So this is questions I have sometimes with our, the goaltending department, and just as these are discussions, these are not criticisms either, Fluto, as I wanted to point that out. We talk about it. We have a goalie that we've tried to limit his starts over the years. I know since I've took over, we've tried to really map it out. There's always hiccups, injuries, COVID obviously affects the schedule. So we're not putting in the load on him is reasonable, and we've come up with the sort of the 50 game mark over at 80 game season, and some of that is analytics driven from upstairs. They give us the numbers and obviously backs that up. So there's that there's a number of different factors why. So at the end of the day, this year was more about, because of the condensed schedule, we'll try to limit to 2 days a week. So now you go into the playoffs and you're playing every second day, you could have up to 4 games a week. So it's a little bit sort of, you haven't trained for that. But at the same time, I don't know if that makes you better. If you play 4 games a week, it's going to make you better in the playoffs 4 games a week, if you do that in the regular season. So I don't know if that analogy is accurate, but at the end of the day, in our situation, it is a big ask, but we do lighten his load in the regular season. So hopefully he can get on that extended run. It worked out great against the year we went to the finals. Now we had some built-in time off after Carolina, so that obviously helps. In this particular playoff, we had some time off after Washington, so that would help in that regard. So that's a little bit of circumstance too. Do you win early, or does the series get extended? But to your point, I do believe that it will become more common, and is something we would discuss going forward, and even talked about it this year a little bit. But at the end of the day, Tuukka played so well against Washington. You don't want to outthink yourself either, right? Like, he's playing well, he's healthy. So you just keep going back to that guy. So at the end of the day, we can look back at it, but I think you will see more teams do it. The Islanders made a switch early in their series, worked out for them. In both series for that matter. Sorry, Tampa runs with their guy. Washington was a different animal in terms of an injury. So different things happen. I think you see both sides. Vegas has been predominantly Fleury. Montreal has been all Price. So again, I still think there's a lot of the sort of way of thinking that it's one guy, it's his net, off you go. And I think you're going to see some guys, that teams that do use 2 goaltenders during the season quite a bit will go to that format. So that was something to be considered down the road.
Emily Benjamin.
Hey, Bruce. With Taylor Hall, you mentioned talking to some of the veterans about, sort of their assessments and what fits could be. Taylor Hall has been very clear about the kind of fit he thought he was in Boston. I wanted to get sort of your full assessment of the time that you had with him, and maybe how that could be different, better, whatever, if you had him for a full season going forward.
Well, he played very well for us. Obviously, finishing up against the Islanders, didn't have the numbers. Their whole line didn't have the numbers they had against Washington in the regular season. So some of that is a learning curve for the player. The deepest he's been in the playoffs. Usually the harder it gets as you go along. And those are some things you just have to learn on your own, I think, as a player to a certain extent. Hopefully he's better off for it the next time he's in that position. As for, he really balanced out our attack in terms of a line of 1A and 1B, and I think that made it real difficult on opponents. I think he really re-energized Krejci in his play. Smitty sort of found his way to that line. Smitty played well with everybody. So, but at the end of the day, that's what I saw with Taylor. And I think the next playoffs he's in, he'll be better prepared for it. I hope it's with the Boston Bruins. He did a good job for us. He's a good player. He's a good person. He works hard. I think he knows what he wants out of his career now. He's been in a few different places. He's made some money. And hopefully we can both sides can make it work. So that's what I see with Taylor. I think the benefit of being here for the full season, Emily, would be just to watch how hard a guy like Brad Marchand practices and plays every day of the season. Brad will take his occasional maintenance day. But other than that, when he's on the ice, it's 100%, competing against whoever in practice, second effort in the game. So I think that can only help a player like Taylor that is a little farther ahead and has been through some of that and has had some seasons like Marshy where he's an elite player. And if he's going to get back to that level, I think watching Marshy every day would be a huge benefit for him.
Matt Porter.
Morning, Bruce. Two, if I could, with the young defensemen that, we're kind of training on the job here, so to speak, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, do you think that was the right call organizationally, or was there a lack of depth on defense that just kind of cropped up, because of situations, because of injuries? How do you feel about the move to do that in retrospect?
Well, listen, we were all on board with the move, so I had no doubts about that. We, we had conversations with Z. The Tory one all lay between management and the player. That's a free agent thing that, the player and the team have to agree, right? It's got to be and as for Z, we've talked about it, that the role that we saw him in, he wanted a greater role. So entirely his choice. But as you move forward, we felt that, again, not to go back in time, but these younger guys had earned an opportunity with where they were in their development. Obviously, we made we didn't just decide all of a sudden. We looked at where they were in their careers, what they had done, how they could help us, and I thought the start of the year showed that they were moving in the right direction. I mean, early season hockey is not playoff hockey. We all know that. So, we were hoping to grow them during the year to get them to the, if you need to address that experience factor, the playoffs, that's what the deadline's for, or throughout the year. So they progressed well. Come playoff time, I think I liked our depth. The problem was our depth had surgery on the back end. People forget that Moore and Camphor have played in this league. They've been good, solid players when they've gone in. They've both competed for regular time. Johnny's a little bit in that bucket as well, with the Zaboros and the Lozons coming in, and even Vac, who didn't push through, but so he had to compete against those guys, but they weren't available as well. So we can't forget that I think Sweens did a good job with that part of it. We got Tenorti, who came in and played well for us mid-season, and was a nice fit for us. But at the end of the day, you probably, the deeper you go, you look at were they going to grow their game that fast to get us through all those rounds? And, that's an unknown. So that's where the Riley acquisition came in for us and was a good fit. He was able to play good, solid hockey for us, had been in the league for a while. So I look at it more that way, as we went into the year knowing that, we wanted to get younger at that position and grow some of our, you draft and develop in this league if you want to have success. So we put the guys in there. Losey ended up getting hurt in the playoffs. Unfortunately, had some tough luck again, blocking a shot. And then Zaboro got hurt late in the year. So there's a little bit of that goes into it. We'll never know whether they're, they could have sort of grown their game down the stretch and been really good playoff performers for us because of the injury. So that's one that's still an unknown a little bit. So that's, like I said, I thought Donnie did a good job with having good players to come in, some solid depth guys in the salary cap world. You can't just roll through elite players one after another. So that's what happened back there. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, we weren't able to get it done, but I don't put that all on the young guys. And we had some veteran guys had some hiccups too in this playoff. So that's the way it played out in my estimation. Are we lacking a guy back there, a second pair guy with Carlo? That's a, established guy in the league. That I think that would help us at the end of the day. And I think we all realize that. So those will be discussions going forward. And maybe one of those young guys will grow into that. Like I said, it's an incomplete judgment on them because they were injured and didn't get that playoff experience.
And then the process of making tweaks to what you do systematically is, I'm assuming part of that is personnel driven. You'll have to wait until free agency or what have you. Just what is that process like? And do you see, a need for any tweaks, or is that still to be determined when you kind of see the full roster here?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's obviously that personnel is I don't like to, you build your systems around the people that are playing them, within reason. We've always done that. So we'll see what our rosters shapes up to be here in the next, I don't know what, whatever, say 6 weeks or whatever it takes to get to it. And then at the end of the day, every year we've done a little something different. We look at obviously our team, but you look at trends throughout the league. We started stretching out a little more with our wingers out of our own end and making one quick pass instead of maybe supporting it with 2 passes out of the zone. Some of that was personnel driven. Some of it's just the way the game is now. There's certain areas of our game. We like our numbers defensively. We need to close quicker on our end at times. So some of that's a product of the system keeping to the outside. Some of it is a product of the personnel understanding that, yes, we want to keep them to the outside, but when it's your turn to finish a play or end a play, you got to do it. And that's where you miss the Carlos and the Millers back there. They're very good at it. It's kind of one of those non-stat plays that happen throughout the game that you don't look at the score sheet and see, but they're good at it. They're long, they're quick. They've got good IQs for that. So that was an issue for us against the Islanders at times. But we have to build more of that into our game, I think, defensively, because I think our layer system is fine. We do a good job with it. Continue to emphasize the block shot parts for our forwards. We got away from that a little bit. The Islanders did a good job getting pucks through. So there's obviously some tweaks that you see immediately from your last series, and then you've got to look at the whole year in general. What hurt us the most. So typically we sit down with that. There's some analytics come back at us that help identify those areas, or sort of reinforce what we're seeing with the eye test, and that's what we'll do going forward. Now, if the goaltender changes, which it looks like it will with Tuukka having surgery, then we factor in some of that with, how does our goaltender play as well in a certain system. So a lot of that goes into it, Matt. At the end of the day, we feel we're a good team that's close. Play a little better in this series in certain pockets of games, and we'd be playing Tampa. So we have to be careful, we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak, and just fix the areas that sort of cost us and keep reinforcing and building on the good stuff.